Hello, and welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast. I'm your host, Emily, and thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of the podcast. On this one, we are going to talk about my healing journey. Now, a healing journey is something that's really interesting. And for me, it's interesting because there's like the societal idea that a healing journey is you kind of reinvesting time into yourself, whether that be through meditation or through journaling or through going on some like find yourself trip. I don't know. Everyone's healing journey is different, but I think the whole point of a healing journey is for you to kind of recognize some traumas that you may have actually went through and start to really just kind of figure out how you can be better because of those things instead of in spite of them. And for me, I actually did not really recognize that I was on a healing journey until my depression decided to beat my ass. And that's something that I want to talk about on this show. So if you guys have noticed, since the beginning of the year, I have only released 3 episodes of the podcast. I did my year in review, and then I did 2 episodes with guests. And then other than that, though, I've been like on TikTok, I've been on Instagram. I had every intention of releasing another episode in January, and I just didn't do it. And thinking about everything that I went through, and I have definitely talked about on this podcast from 2024, by the second week of January, third week of January, you guys, I was going through a lot. So, I had started a new job. I'm officially also done with school. And listen, finishing my master's program was amazing. And walking that stage at Drake University, getting my master's, getting like the actual like physical copy, now that I have it, all of those things was really great. But I started to realize that now that I had my master's degree, I almost had like this internal struggle with what's my purpose now? What do I do now? And I was very antsy about what it is that I'm going to do next, because whatever it is that I decide to do next, whether it be to go for another master's or go for a PhD, it has to be meaningful, right? And I have to make a decision now. That was another thing. Another thing that sent me into a depression spiral is not taking my meds regularly. And that's a whole other thing that if you are on medications prescribed by your doctor for anxiety and depression, please continue to take them regularly. I was not, and I actually fell into a really, really bad bout of insomnia. And what happened was I found myself, and this usually happens when I'm in my depression spiral, is that I am very high functioning outside of my apartment. So I can go to work, I can get all the things done. I don't really have an issue with connecting with people or getting my task list done or anything like that. But what happened was when I would get home, I wouldn't want to do anything. My apartment was a mess. I barely had food in the refrigerator. Don't worry, George is okay. He always got taken care of. But just this whole concept of like doing things around my apartment, like folding my clothes, cleaning my bathroom, or just anything outside of me sitting on the couch watching TV, I just didn't want to do. And there were some other things also that played into the reason why I went into a depression spiral. I know for me, when I go into one, what tends to happen is I feel incredibly isolated and alone. Isolated because, of course, like I'm divorced, but also realizing that I don't have a romantic connection right now. I'm not in a relationship. And this time last year, I was in one. And this time the year before that, I was in one. And this time the year before that, granted, it was my marriage, but I was still in a relationship. This is the first time in my life since I was 19 years old that I am starting a year completely solo. And I didn't know how to express that to anyone. I didn't know how to talk to anyone about that. I didn't really feel like I could reach out to my friends, and not for them to not understand, but I didn't want to bother them. Then you just feel like you're alone. And I remember there's something that my ex-boyfriend had said to me when we were in an argument. And he had said, Emily, your life has no purpose, therefore it has no meaning. And I remember repeating that in my head. And that's something that unfortunately I do actually repeat in my head. And I go down the spiral. So when I get to thinking all of that negative self-talk and all of those things, I go deeper and deeper and deeper into the spiral. And the crazy thing about the spiral, no one knows that I am suffering because I don't show it. The only place you would have seen me suffer would have been in my apartment, but I don't let people in my apartment. So how are you going to know these things, right? I'm in this spiral and I'm barely hanging on and just feeling really down about myself. And then something else happened to where, and I've talked about this on the podcast already. My ex-boyfriend actually ended up getting in trouble. I'm not going to go into it. But when I found that out, I started to think even worse because he and I went through what we went through. Then I attempted to rekindle our relationship and it didn't work. And so there's that immediate feeling of guilt that, well, maybe if I would have worked a little harder, maybe had I done X, Y, or Z, none of this would happen. And I started blaming myself. So I'm already in the spiral. I'm not sleeping. I'm not really doing all that well in my mental and in my emotional state. And now this piece gets added on. And then it's like, well, why did I get a master's? And all of these different things that I was just going through during that time. And again, you guys, it's only the 16th of February. Like, this is all within like the first like month of the year. And so it just got really bad. It got really dark. I was very sad. And what eventually pulled me out, it wasn't like an aha moment or anything like that. It was a multitude of things. It was me getting back on track with my medication. It was me understanding that with my ex, him getting in trouble or whatever happens to him now has nothing to do with me, and it has everything to do with him. I cannot carry the burden of him and his life choices on me anymore. I still care about him. I'm always going to want the best for him. But until he wants the best for himself, there's nothing that I can do. And then slowly but surely, I would say probably like at the beginning of this month, I started to feel better. And I released the episode with Betty Andrews from the I'll Make Me a World Festival. And I remember as I sat down and I listened to the interview and I made my edits and I did all of the things, I just started to feel better. I realized that with my headphones on and I'm listening and I'm updating all the captions and I'm editing and I'm splicing things together and all these other things, I'm starting to realize that I have purpose and this is the purpose, right? And releasing the episode was great. And getting all of my social media stuff together was fun for me again. And then the other thing that happened was the day before the I'll Make Me a World event, friend, prior show guest, Courtney Perry of Lady Luck Scented Candles did a wine and canvas and candle making event. And I had remembered seeing it multiple times on social media. She is so good at promoting herself and her business. And I just remember seeing it. And that morning I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this $40. I'm going to do it. Because if I buy the ticket, I can't not go. Right. So I went to the event, y'all. I went to the event and I had fun. And I felt like I'm going to be okay because there's always going to be something for me to do. I don't have to do it with somebody else. I could literally just go and do something on my own and that just be the end of it, right? But I also think that the other reason why that event really meant a lot was because it was me finally taking a moment to put myself first, recognize what my need was, and my need was to get out of my apartment and be social and actually do that thing. And it felt good, you guys. I had so much fun at that event. I made a candle and I actually like the wine and canvas event was awesome because she didn't like give us a prompt. And instead what she did was she had paints and a little canvas and she said, I want you guys to paint whatever feels right. And so what I did, and I'm showing it. So if you're looking at the video podcast, then you'll see this. But if not, I will be sure to describe it. But this is what I ended up painting. So this is a representation of my depression. I decided to use cool colors and starting with, as you guys can see, purples and some dark purples, some blues. There's also some shimmer on here as well. And if you guys notice down here in the corner, there's kind of like a hint of yellow. And then there are some white specks. And then there's just some kind of chaos in colors. I feel like this is the best representation of what I feel like my depression looks like. My depression is calm. My depression isn't manic, but my depression is chaotic in how it looks in my brain, but not what I portray out to other people. And then the yellow is a representation of really just kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel. That's why it's not at the top. It's actually at the bottom. And this actually sits on my desk. So that is something that when I get to come into my space to record this podcast or to do some creating, whether I'm working on diamond art or whatever, I can kind of look at that and really think about where I am and the fact that that is what my depression and my anxiety looks like in my mind. And that's okay because it's personal to me. But my anxiety and my depression is a part of me. It does not define me. And I think that leads me into kind of like the next thing that I do want to talk about. And that's when I'm in my spiral, the only thing I'm really capable of doing is kind of like bare minimum taking care of myself, and that's take shower every day, Emily, brush your teeth, try and get some sleep. But other than that, during that time frame, I'm really not doing anything productive. So during that time frame, I didn't journal. During that time frame, I wasn't doing any reading. During that time frame, I was doing a lot of actually scrolling on social media, which give or take, if you want to think that that's good or bad, I don't even know anymore. Ultimately, I wasn't doing anything where I could actually see the fruits of my labor. There was no me checking things off of a list or anything like that. And so one of the things that I ended up doing, though, was really, if you guys notice, if you're watching the video podcast, I'm not in my dining room. I'm actually in the office space that I have created for myself for this podcast. And I have things on the wall. I have my diamond art on the wall. And this space, I was finally able to clear out, declutter, and organize. So that way now, when I do want to work on my podcast, I have a space to do so. That was another thing of when I was working on the podcast and getting everything together. Before I edited the last episode, I said, I'm not touching this podcast until I get this room cleaned up. And I knew I was in a crunch because I knew I wanted to get that episode out prior to I'll Make Me Your World happening. So that was motivation for me. And now that I do have this space, it's not perfect. I still have things that I need to organize and move around and all of those great things. But it feels really good to have a space to where I can come in and I can do these things and not have to sit in my dining room, which it was right, like my desk was right by the window too in the dining room, and it's like super cold over there. So that really wasn't appealing for me to do my podcast during the winter months. The next thing that is helping me get out of my spiral and helping me maintain my depression is getting sleep. Sleep is so necessary. I try to get at least 6.5 to 7 hours every night, give or take. When I went through my bout with insomnia, and now that like I'm back on my meds and I'm all regulated and things like that, I'm noticing that not only am I just sleeping and falling asleep, but I'm staying asleep and I'm sleeping peacefully and I'm not as tired the next day. I mean, granted, everybody wants a little bit of a few more extra minutes in the morning, especially when you got to go to work and it's cold outside and all of those things. But sleep has really been like a really big game changer. And I think a lot of it was because I didn't get it for a while, but at the same time, I am feeling more like a person when I can get a few hours of rest and go on about my day and my task list. So next thing I want to talk about, and then I'll kind of like talk about some goals and things like that I want to achieve as I'm on this healing journey, is getting back to journaling, y'all. I did a whole episode about journaling and how much I love it and how it's a part of my routine. And it's funny because once journaling fell off of my routine, that's where I feel like a lot of my problems started. So over the weekend, me and my friend Kimberly, shout out to her, we had a virtual journaling session. And it was amazing. But what we did, so, we're both big journalers. Her journal is absolutely gorgeous. And we just really talked about, first of all, the journals that we're using, why they're important, the purpose that we have behind them. And then after we did that and like caught up a little bit and all of those great things, we actually journaled virtually for probably about 45 minutes. And it was the first time in a long time that I had written consistently in my journal. I ended up knocking out probably like 5 pages. And the thing was, though, is that there were so many things that I wanted to journal about. And it was like in my brain, again, with what my painting looks like, my brain was very chaotic and I had all these different things going around in my head. So I actually took a moment and I wrote everything down on a Post-it note. Again, I'm showing it on the video podcast. So yeah, so me like writing everything down and then going to my journal, which I'll show you guys right here, going to my actual journal and writing everything out based on kind of the list and what I wanted to talk about, and then adding in pictures because I have a mini printer, was so big for me. And I'm really, really happy that I did it. Last night, even though I didn't finish the list, last night was the first time in a while that it wasn't even about me going to sleep, but I felt like my mind was a little bit more at rest than it had been. So another part of me on this healing journey is getting back to writing, getting back to the thing that I know I love. Because when I'm able to write out my feelings and I'm able to write out the things that happen to me so I can start to understand them, it makes me feel better. And it just makes me feel like everything's going to be okay. And it reminds me that as you're healing, you're learning how to cope and how to deal with things. I mean, don't get me wrong, you guys. I'm a March Pisces. The crash out, I perfected it. But I don't need to crash out about everything. And it's going to be okay if I have a moment where I'm upset or I'm angry or things like that. It's going to be incredibly important to write about it instead of just holding it all in, because I hold everything in. And again, I'm a Pisces. I'm a March Pisces. I hold it all in and I bottle it up. And then the crash out, it's always like incredibly big. Ask me how I know. I've been there before. So with me and my friend talking about our journals, so that journal that I just showed you guys is my daily. So that's the one I write in. I mean, I write in them all every day, but when I want to extensively write about something, then I'll write in that one. I also have logs and trackers in there for my mood, so let's say for my mood, I track my period and my emotions and my moods and all those things. Yes, I do track those things. I also track books that I read, TV shows and documentaries that I watch, movies that I see. I'm also going to be tracking like my diamond art that I work on for the year. All of that gets tracked in there. The next one that I do work on is I do have this 5-year journal that I actually started in 2023. So this one is actually really interesting because I also have the little tracker to see like how many days in a year that I've been writing in them. And because of everything that happened to me last year, I missed a lot of days in this, but I really want to get back on track and writing in this every day. And it's always just kind of random thought or a thing that happened. I can show you guys. Let me see if I can find a blank page. So this is actually what a blank page looks like. And it has a spot to where you can add the year and then you can go ahead and write in about your day and all of that stuff. So that is the 5-year journal. And then the last one that I have is one that it was super cheap. I got it at Ross. So it is really not anything special, but it's basically just like a really simple weekly planner that I have that, again, it's a way for me to write more extensively about something that made me happy during the day. So I really try and focus on something that was really happy, something that just like really brightened my day and made me feel good. I write about that in here. And it's also like just a happy looking planner. I mean, it's got butterflies all over it. It's got ample room for a lot of notes. I try to write myself a letter every month at the beginning of the month. And then I also do like a monthly recap in the back. And it's a great planner journal thing. So again, writing has always been something that I love to do. And I am now remembering how therapeutic it is. And I also think that as I'm starting to reflect on things that have happened to me and where I want my life to go next, especially as I'm in this new season of my life with starting a year and really just being on my own. Those are all things that are really important. And I want to get back to writing about in my journal. The last thing, though, that I want to talk about is now that I'm on the other side, now that the stars in my life have kind of started to align a little bit, and I'm in a place where I'm wanting to be productive and I'm wanting to do things and I'm wanting to not be a sloth and just be on my couch and not doing anything and not engaging with my friends or events and things like that. Now that I'm on the other side of it, what I have learned is that first and foremost, I don't have anything to be ashamed of. I think when I was in my spiral, there was a really big feeling of shame. Like, Emily, you have all of these great things going for you. Why are you letting something that's circumstantial affect you like this? It's okay. Like, we all have those feelings where like we're not good enough, we don't know enough, we don't anything like that. And I think I have let myself to believe that that kind of talk is shameful because I do have so many things to be thankful and grateful for. But that's not true. Like, even though I have everything to be thankful and grateful for, it's still okay for me to have a bad day. It's still okay for me to be like, I'm not dealing and I'm going to go sit on the couch and watch TV and not do anything and just hang out with my dog. That is totally okay. But what is not okay is for me to continuously tell myself that I'm not loved, to continuously tell myself that I don't belong, that I don't fit in anywhere, that I don't deserve all the good things. That part is not okay. And that's going to be the part that with my anxiety and depression, I'm always going to have to fight. And I'm just really grateful right now that there were people around me this whole time that even though they may not have known what I was going through, I know without a shadow of a doubt that if I would have spoken up, they would have helped me. I did have a couple of friends that I would call, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm crashing out. And instead of them saying, no, don't do that, all of that, they just let me crash out. They just let me talk. And then they would talk through things with me. And then everything just felt better. I feel better. So my healing journey is not over. I know the next step for me in this journey is to, number one, make a list of things I want to do around my apartment because she is not where I want her to be right now, and I'm not saying that like, like I'm a hoarder or anything like that. And I've got like stuff all over the place. No, I'm not talking about that. It's more or less just, hey, instead of you digging around for what to wear on your bed, because that's where all your clothes are, let's work on hanging those up and getting everything organized. And hey, you see those 2 boxes of clothes that you haven't worn in 2 years? Let's sort through those and get those things donated so someone else can enjoy them. So those are kind of some of the little to-do lists that I have. Another thing that I am going to be working on. So I know I talked in my journaling episode about the prompt book that I had worked on, and I absolutely loved it. It was called Write and Wreck, and it had over 200 prompts, and I would go in and talk about my past, present, and future self. It was a great book. I had so much fun doing it. And I actually found another workbook that I'm actually going to start writing on. This one is a little bit more in depth. So there's some pre-work that does have to take place in it. There's a lot of reading before you just jump in and start writing your prompts and everything like that. But it is called the Self-Love Workbook for Black Women. This is by Rachel Johnson. She is a licensed medical social worker, actually, and health professional. But this is something that I really want to start working on because, as you guys already know, we as Black women, our experiences are incredibly different. But at the same time, we are taught and expected to nurture and love everyone else and not give ourselves a lot of that back. So that's something that I am personally going to be working on moving forward, is to definitely continue to give love, nurture, and support to my friends and family and people in my life that I care about. But I'm going to also be working actively at doing some of that for myself. So I will have a link to this in the description here. I bought it off of Amazon, so I'm going to find it on Amazon for y'all. But also, if you want to potentially buy this at another place, then I will make sure that I have the ISBN number for you so you can potentially get it from a small or independent bookstore of your choice if you choose to not buy from Amazon. One thing about this podcast that I'm always going to do, I'm always going to be very open and honest about what it is that I'm going through, because I feel like this podcast, for me, while it is a way for Black women to connect and share our stories and for Black people to build community within Des Moines, greater, at the same time, this podcast has been therapy for me. And this is the first time in my life where I'm actually doing something that is not rooted to a job. It's not rooted to another person. It's really just rooted to me and something that I'm truly passionate about. And I am so grateful that this experience has been here for me. And I really hope that this is something that I can continue. I've got a lot of ideas of things that I want to do next. And season 2 is around the corner. So there's a lot of really, really great things to come on this podcast. And I know now that I'm on the other side of this recent depression spiral that I went through, I can really start focusing on those things, as well as the other things that are really important in my life. Next week's episode, I'm really excited. I will have Dr. Destiny Woodruss on the show. She will be talking about a moment that she had with the water and also her podcast, Porch Tea, which is on YouTube. So please make sure that you guys are tuning in for that one. That one is going to take place on Monday, February 24th, 11 a.m. Central. That will drop on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and on Wednesday, the video episode will drop on YouTube. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to me again this week. Also, make sure you're checking out my blog because I'm going to start really hammering down and posting about some things in pop culture that are currently happening right now. I mean, you guys, it's Black History Month. And when I tell you Black people are winning, we are truly winning. Shout out to Beyonce for finally getting her album of the year. Shout out to Kendrick Lamar for collectively making the term A minor almost like a battle cry at this point. And then also shout out to the Philadelphia Eagles for winning the Super Bowl last week. So those things have been just like super inspirational and fun, but also on the blog. So I want to talk about those things, but I'm a documentary girly. And so I actually just released last week 2 new blog posts about a couple of documentaries that I watched. And what my review of them were. I'm going to be doing that with some others that I have watched here over the next probably like week and a half. So be on the lookout for those. So my website, www.blackgirliowa.com. And then also please be sure to go follow me on TikTok and on Instagram at Black Girl Iowa. All right. Until next time, everybody take care of yourself and I will see you guys on the next episode. All right. Bye.